Welcome to Better Picks. I'm Tim Melky, your host. Today we're going to be looking at digital montage using this image, Dust, from Dust to Life, the Visual Gospel. The breakdown starts now. So you've seen the individual steps of the final kept pieces, but this is actually even going deeper into what I actually shot. I shot a number of different trees, backgrounds, clouds, different shots that I have that I might be usable in the future. I wasn't exactly sure. But I also shot all the pictures of me posing, getting dust on me, moving in the dirt, throwing dirt in the air, different poses, different gestures, slightly different lightings. And I shot lots and lots of different pictures to get that right concept. Had my photographer work with getting me dirty, knowing how to stand, knowing how to pose, knowing about how much framing I wanted, the angle I wanted. It was all working together to get that correct moment. Shooting in lots of different areas. And then the nice thing I like about Bridge, Adobe Bridge is great for this, is shooting and then having the option to rate our pictures. So having all the different pictures, there's lots of them. How am I going to keep my thoughts straight between all these different pictures? Well, the nice thing is you have a rating system. So I actually have 47 that I never even used. So my first step was I go through and choose all 3 stars and anything that caught my eye. I thought it was decent, the exposure was okay, the focus was good, the gesture was good, I give it a 3-star. I'm going to take a short break here into the actual part of the video and show you the default settings for editing your number shortcuts for the labeling system. If you go over to Edit in Adobe Bridge, go down to Preferences, you'll find under, normally pull the general settings, I'm going to go down to Labels. This checkbox will be on automatically on your version by default. Uncheck that box, makes it so you can take the control key off. Otherwise, you have to control and 1 through 5 to do the star rankings, or control 6 through 9 to do the color coding system. So I've turned it off. So now all I have to do is quickly number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to get the color, or to get the star rankings, and I can do 6 through 9 to get the color rankings. Makes it a little bit easier, and I find every little step that makes it easier in your life is just one way to make you more efficient. And then I'd go through it again and I'd give everything a 4-star that I thought was really, really good. The best of the best, cream of the crop. It was all 4 stars. These are possibilities that have a real good chance of making it into the final piece. If you use the numbers 6 through 9 on your keyboard, you can actually give it a rating of red, yellow, green, or kind of a cyan color. So I would give green. If this is really the one I want, I'd give it a green rating. 5 stars helps to show the best of the best, usually for the Photoshop image, the final pieces. And so a green approved image starts to show all the different pieces of how it came together. And you can see different stages, different edit files that I have. So it's trial and error. It's a process. It's shooting lots of pictures. Most of them, unless you do a YouTube video like this, you'll never see the behind the scenes. Anybody else will. But you have lots of different pictures. They shoot would take me maybe a couple hours at least between setup, tear down. Here in this instance, I had to take several showers just to get all the sand out of my hair. But it's a process, an artistic process. It should be an enjoyable process. If it's not, maybe it's not for you. But it'd be a process that you're creating art, you're creating form, the gesture, the light, you're seeing the complete picture, how it's brought together. Sometimes if you're using maybe someone who's not a very good photographer, they might not have a clue on what you're doing. But if you're doing self-portraiture, you have to guide them along the process, knowing, trust me, this is what we're looking for. This is looking good. This is a good process of what we're going to end up with a final product. So let's jump into how I constructed this image. Of course, as you see before you is the final image, but what you've seen in the process of the before and after pictures is actually quite complex in how we put it together. So let's go ahead and look at our panels here in Photoshop, the layers panel. It's quite a bit of different layers. And I'm going to go and start at the beginning and work my way to the top. So I got over a dozen layers or so. And I start to click through this layer. This is the tree shot. As it was shot, I didn't actually have some of those fancy filters. I actually only had the shot like this. But in order to make it fit and belong in the scene, I had to blur the background and then add a lighting effects tool. Set up there to work like that. The lighting effects tool, actually all it is just moving a blurry layer and then a different setup through the setup. Lighting effects is a great way to enhance the control of your scene, to create this blurriness to it. So the nice thing here, because I have it as a smart object, I've created the raw file, the original capture of the trees in the broad daylight, is a smart object. I can create all these smart filters. So if I double click on my light effects, I can actually go in and change the lighting effects now, today, even though I edited this months ago. It was a great option. So I can see the controls, bring up the same tools, adjust it, tweak it, and hit OK, and it'll change all those changes because it is a smart object with the smart filters attached. Brilliant thing. One of the excellent things about Photoshop that I like. I'm going to go ahead and hit cancel because I'm not going to make any changes. But I could. That's the process. Maneuvering it, figuring out what you want, and coming up with the setup. Then I used a little bit of adjustment layer instead of trying to work with exactly not how the lighting effect worked. I want to darken that corner just a little bit, so I just put a adjustment layer. To do adjustment layers, I just went to the little half moon setup, created a levels curve, and under the levels, and then I told it just make it darker. So according to my settings, I adjusted a little bit darker, and I can make that more or less dark, and it's all non-destructive. That's the beauty of Photoshop. That's why you really need to use non-destructive techniques to get the best results. Moving through, we used a couple of the different dust pictures, putting dust into the air to kind of create that atmosphere. Dust behind, dust in front, foreground, background, lots of elements to bring it together. So there's the layer of dust. And also I have, it's not just on a normal layer. Blending modes are important. What do they mean? I went to my normal layer. You have the black coming through, the black background that I shot it. I shot it on a black background intentionally so I could remove that. But under normal, it didn't do a very good job of that. So I go down to lighten, and there it is. It starts to pull out the black. The black disappears against brighter objects, so the bright comes through, but the sand still shows up as kind of a dusty image. The image of the hands, I shot them together, but to get the actual final composite, I had to shoot. I made each one duplicate layer, one with the left hand, one with the right hand, so I could control each one individually to make sure it worked. The different lighting effects on it, the hand it was, blurred it a little bit, changed the lighting to kind of match a little bit. I shot it in a similar lighting as I shot the body, but it wasn't exactly the same because of scale. I tweaked it a little bit and gave myself a little bit of artistic lighting license. The nice thing is, as an artist, you can have that ability to control what you want and to kind of tweak it more than really the shadows would look natural. And then more darkening the hand again, having so the light seems to be coming on top and below. God has this large vision of light. God is light coming through. Another section on the levels. This is kind of just changing the overall levels of the hand where it overexposed just a little bit. But I was bringing a smart object, so I had the detail to bring it back in, which was good. And then bringing in the layer here, of course, using some type of a normal blending mode. The smart objects filter, I got the smart object to kind of change the filter. That's how I'd shot it. But the smart object emphasizing the hand more and the head, and kind of falls off onto the body, so it's not as much onto the body. Right now there's a blotchiness because the hand covers it. I didn't worry about going to all the detail to fix it. Next object, the hand goes over top. Works out pretty well. And cut it out. It takes time. You actually got to zoom in quite a bit. I would zoom in to 100%. Sometimes even 200% on my mask. And then I would come up here. I'm using the space bar, the hand tool. Come up here with a white brush. And I would paint what I want to keep. And there's the actual hand against the black backdrop. I didn't want that in there. Instead, I just masked it out. It took work. There was some options in terms of selection tools I could work with. Let me just turn off the mask for a little bit. This is what the original shot looked like of the two hands. I was able to go and kind of take a selection tool with the black, from the black selection tool, select what's black and remove that pretty easily, pretty quickly in that layer. But that allows me to have that option to take out the hand quickly. Now there's two different kinds of adjustment layers. Technically they're both adjustment layers. But I have the first one here, which is done as just a levels adjustment, darkening the hand, kind of add some lighting effects to the hand. But I've also got here what's called a clipping mask. I can actually remove the clipping mask, and that's going to do some nasty things. Let me right-click on it. Go to Release Clipping Mask. If I do that, what happens is this filter hits this layer and all the layers underneath it, backwards order. But a clipping mask, what that'll do is that when you actually have a layer, you right-click on it and hit Create Clipping Mask. Mine says Release now because I put it back on. The clipping mask allows it to affect just the layer that it's next to, just the layer that's underneath it, not all the subsequent layers below it. So it affects just the hand. Same thing, another adjusting layer just on the hand, and it makes it work. And then bring in those last little details, the dust that sprays through the scene. It does two things. For one, it looks cool. It looks artistic. It helps to add that dust just is flowing around as God is crafting Adam from the dust of the earth and breathing into his nostrils the breath of life. That's excellent artistic technique. So there's a purpose behind it in the picture. But there's also the technique that's helpful just to make it so it blends the rest of the picture. because any little mistakes, maybe something that's not exactly perfect in the editing world, maybe there's a slight not quite perfect touch out in my hair or maybe parts of the hands, it helps to cover up that. So not only does it look good, it covers up little defects, little problems that might actually be existing in the frame. And the last layer, this is pretty typical of an artistic digital montage type piece. This is just a filter over top of the picture to kind of give it a warming tone. All the colors start to blend together because this picture goes over top of it. Right now it's at a normal layer at 10%. So what is it? Well, let me make it 100%. All it was what I shot for part of my thesis work was shooting paper that I'd crinkled up in a ball, unraveled it, and covered it in coffee and tea stains. And then I baked them in the oven. So it kind of has this old aged paper feel. So I photographed that old aged paper that I created in the oven in a matter of a few minutes in the oven. And then brought that in over top of the layer and then just toned it down something like 8-10%. Just to add that warming color, but there's some texture to it that helps kind of blend the entire thing together. Could I have done it going under a new mode and create a new color? Sure, a new gradient. Sure, I could have done that way and had an adjustment layer, that same setup, but instead I actually like to create my own work, an own photograph, bringing it in together to give that extra warming touch. Because without it, it's kind of cool. It needs that warming tone, just going to bring everything to the extra part of putting the final touches on the image. So that's Dust, the first image in Dust to Life, the visual gospel. I hope that's helpful as we bring together this final collage of digital montage work. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit my subscribe button to watch more videos as I create them into the future.